Based on the classic novel written by Mary Shelley and released in 1931 by Universal Pictures, Frankenstein, directed by James Whale, is the story about a man named Dr. Henry Frankenstein who sought to prove man's capacity in creating life through an unethical experiment that involves bringing life to a vessel that he created himself. After a thunderous night, he successfully created life. However, this new being, still in an age of infancy, is abused and is seen as a monster. As a result, it lashes out against its creator and runs off, not understanding the world around him, yet treated like a monster when he makes a terrible mistake. The creation suffers as a result of the sins of his creator. The film is also a masterclass in telling a story that warns mankind of its ambition clouding its better judgment, which could potentially lead to disaster. This film, as well as its direct sequel, The Bride of Frankenstein, differ from the original novel, and quite significantly. For example, and this is spoilers ahead, the monster kills Dr. Frankenstein's wife Elizabeth in the novel after he refuses to give the monster a mate. That never happens in this movie. In fact, it doesn't even happen in Bride of Frankenstein either, despite that one introducing a mate for the monster. But that is something that we will discuss for another time. Despite the differences from the novel, however, Frankenstein 1931 still gives us a story that emphasizes the thematic core of the original source material, about how man's desire to go beyond certain boundaries can lead to disaster and tragedy. Characters such as Frankenstein's assistant and his former mentor, Dr. Waldman, view his creation as a monster, with even Frankenstein going on to consider him as an abomination that is a danger to everyone once the monster lashes out. But when the mob of villagers dispatch justice on the monster for his misdeeds, it is with absolute cruelty and lack of understanding and compassion for something that doesn't even understand the society he was introduced to or even what he is. Even though the monster drowned little Maria at the pond to see if she was to float in the water like her daisies, he immediately recognized it as a grave mistake and runs away in guilt. Moments like this scene with Maria allow for the audience to see the monster for what he is, a sympathetic being. And the film does such a great job at doing so by making him a being whose deeds are committed based on the notion of either self-defense or a want for friendship. The film allows the monster to be understood and cared about by the audience. While the villagers' response to the monster's actions is understandable based on the information which they were given, for they have no clue of the monster's character or his origin, the monster's fiery punishment up on the windmill is still built on the foundation of tragic circumstances. For Dr. Frankenstein may have succeeded in creating life, but he failed at giving his creation an existence worth living. Regardless of how the other characters are validated by the end of the film, or how the audience may view his experiments and the implications and ethics surrounding them, Henry Frankenstein is a character who strongly believes in what he is doing, and seeks to make a difference by taking humanity one step closer to better understanding the world around it. When his ambition pays off during one stormy night, it gives him more belief than ever in his own convictions. But then, when his creation kills Fritz and turns on him, Frankenstein has no choice but to distance himself from it all and try to move on and go forward, to look at what he has now in his fiancée and make up for the time he lost in his experiments. But when his mistakes come back to haunt him, when his creation kills Fritz and Waldman, as well as harm Elizabeth on their wedding night, Frankenstein sees no other option than to be rid of them by his own hands. For he made the monster with his own hands, and with those same hands, he seeks to purge it from existence. The film does a fantastic job at giving us a character who is much more complex than a stereotypical mad scientist. The film, much like Shelley's novel, shows him as a man whose ambitions and even success in creating life keep him from considering what could come of it, causing him to fail to see any and all variables of what could go wrong. And as a result, he pays for it by having his mistakes coming back to haunt him. While in the novel, he rejects the creation almost immediately after giving life to it, in the movie, Frankenstein stays convicted with it until the monster lashes out and kills Fritz, and at that point, Frankenstein questions it all. Regardless of how the film gets to this point with Frankenstein's character, no matter how different it is from the novel, it still conveys the character very well. The film does have one moment, one scene that is pretty problematic. And that is when Frankenstein gets thrown off the top of the windmill during the climax of the movie. Despite how thrilling the climax is, there is some pretty questionable stuff here regarding this particular moment. The distance of Frankenstein's fall and the way his body hits the sail on the windmill makes it seem like he wouldn't be able to survive it whatsoever. But instead, when the villagers come to him, he appears to just been merely knocked out. It may be possible for someone to survive a fall like that, especially if the fall was broken midway, but the possibility of that being the case is still pretty hazy. It would have been more poetic and all the more tragic if Frankenstein did die from that fall, being killed by his own creation. But regardless, despite that one scene that is a little bit significantly problematic, the scene is still a thrilling climax all the same. The acting is superb, even for a film that was released shortly after the end of the silent era, where people would have to exaggerate their gestures and emotions through visuals. Colin Clive portrays Henry Frankenstein as a man who believes in his experiments and his creation, and wants nothing more than to see it all pay off as a benefit for humanity, regardless of how others may view it as insanity. Whether it's a huge operatic scene like the It's Alive moment during the laboratory sequence, or a more quieter moment, such as when Frankenstein is talking with Waldman about what humanity does in achieving scientific endeavors, like looking to what is beyond the clouds and the stars, or what makes trees bud. Colin Clive gives a great performance. And then we have Boris Karloff, the other man who made the monster. Karloff brings a heart and soul to a tortured being who wants nothing more than to live in peace despite his very limited understanding and unsettling performance. And it is all conveyed beautifully without any sort of dialogue other than a few grunts and growls here and there. He also brings an imposing menace to the role during scenes that call for him to portray the monster as an angry beast that lashes out against those who mistreat him and wish to hurt him. Edward Van Sloan also brings a great performance as Dr. Waldman, a mentor who wants what's best for Frankenstein yet recognizes the potential horrors that his experiments could bring about. Van Sloan's performance in this isn't that much different from what we see of him as Van Helsing in Dracula 1931, nor would it be that much different from when we see of him in The Mummy 1932, where he plays Dr. Muller. However, his performance as Waldman still brings a strong presence all the same, such as when he talks about how Frankenstein had changed as a result of his experiments, bringing an ominous nature to the certain speech where he says that Frankenstein seeks to first destroy life and then recreate it, considering it to be a mad dream. The rest of the cast of the movie does good overall, from Mae Clarke as Elizabeth, to John Bowles as Victor Moritz, to Dwight Fry as Fritz, who certainly has some quirky moments. Not quite as quirky as what we see of him as Renfield in Dracula, but still quirky all the same. For sure, and without a shadow of a doubt, the three performances in the movie that really do stand out are Clive, Van Sloan, and especially Karloff. They're the performances that make the movie. Not only does the film present a timeless tale in sophisticated and well-executed fashion, as well as performances that define certain classic characters as they were known in pop culture today, but its technical aspects, such as set design, cinematography, and effects, also work. The laboratory setting, where Frankenstein gives his creation life, is one of fantastic design, blending classic period piece designs with a sci-fi element. The creation sequence itself in Frankenstein's lab is one of pure spectacle, one that has become a defining moment in cinematic history, presenting the grand scope of the setting of the lab during a thunderous night and an ominous atmosphere of what would come. The scene then culminates into the chilling rise of Frankenstein's creation, which is then all completed by the ecstatic ravings from the Doctor himself and his proclamations of how he became akin to God. The cinematography brings a strong sense of scope to the exquisite set designs throughout the film, such as in the Frankenstein estate, the laboratory, and the countryside, stretching from the cemetery to the mountainous terrain. James Whale and company have done very well with this film in the technical side of things, as they would go on to do so in other films, such as The Invisible Man in 1933, and then in 1935 with The Bride of Frankenstein. Frankenstein, the 1931 film, has proven over the years that it is of strong quality, especially in the strengths of its story and its character work. It is the film that cemented indelibly into pop culture the horror story of when man's ambitions go too far. A story that we would all see inspire many films onward, and it is an all-time classic that has truly earned such a title, and I highly recommend it. Well, I would say that this essay video has come to a close. I would like to thank you all for watching. I wanted to do something with this film for this channel, not just for the Halloween season, and not even just because it's a favorite film of mine when it comes to horror movies and creature features, but also I wanted to do something special regarding Frankenstein for its 90th anniversary. And hopefully I have done the film justice by doing this. I hope you all have enjoyed what I've done here for it. Thank you for watching again. Until my next video, I will see you all later. Happy Halloween.